years now, the shipping industry has lamented sea blindness among the global political elite, particularly in Europe, where shipping was more often than not ignored unless it became a pollution problem. Now, amid unprecedented geopolitical challenges, shipping is finally visible, and the great powers are scrambling to bolster national interests. Shipping is once again recognized as a strategic sector. Donald Trump says that shipbuilding will make America great again. He may even believe that. For the EU, though, shipping is now intrinsically linked to energy and trade security, and as a byproduct of its resurgent status as a critical industry, it is being name-checked in a slew of policies being pushed to light a fire under Europe's industrial competitiveness, in the face of increasingly hostile challenges from the US and China. But political plans are easy enough to produce. Action and the financing to enact it, less so. We finally have the high-level political attention we've always wanted as an industry. The fact that it has arrived just at the point that the industry is facing more geopolitical headwinds than ever before, well, that's just part of the opportunity and the risk that lies ahead. So the question in front of us today is whether this really is a window of opportunity for the industry to capitalize on and secure the conditions it needs to prosper. Or is the existential crisis at the heart of Europe going to sink the shipping industry's prospects inside the world's largest trading bloc? It's a big question. It's a lot of questions, actually. But we have brought in two experts this week to offer up an expert insider's view as they head into what is going to be a supercharged period of political lobbying for shipping. Sotiris Raptis, Secretary-General of European Shipowners, the recently rebranded European Community Shipowners Association, better known as EXA, and Anne Stephenson, the CEO of Danish Shipping. I'm going to start with Sotiris, who is leading the conversation around these opportunities ahead of the European Shipping Summit, which is being held next week, where I'm sure he won't reduce it to such editorialized questions, but essentially everybody is asking whether European shipping is heading for a renaissance or an existential crisis.
Either we grasp the opportunity and we set the conditions, or we lose our competitiveness. It's one of these moments, I would say, make it or break it moments. There is, as you mentioned before, a lot of geopolitical uncertainty. This didn't happen over the last 2 months. We've got COVID before that. We've got the pandemic. We've got the global economy shut down. We've got an ongoing war in Ukraine as well. We've got the Red Sea crisis. Shipping hasn't turned out to be very resilient. At the same time, we've got a widening innovation gap, talking about Europe now, in our economy. And what has become clear is that investments in the energy transition, investments in clean tech and clean fuels is the new battlefield of international competition. And this is what we're going to address in the European Shipping Summit on the 19th and 20th of March with industry leaders, high-ranking policy makers, from the Transport Commissioner to the Director Generals of DG Klima and DG Move, and 4 European ministers. We need to address this widening innovation gap and to ensure that we stay competitive. If we look at shipping in particular, we're going to publish in the next 2 weeks 2 studies commissioned with Lloyd and C. Delft. These studies confirm the main finding of the Draghi report. European shipping is doing really well. Our fleet is growing, but others are growing faster. Our fleet is larger than 3-4 years ago, but the percentage of European shipping relative to the global fleet is dropping, has declined from 40% down to around 35%. This shows that we need to do better in Europe. And talking about Europe, we're 5% Europeans, we're 5% of the global population. The share of the EU economy to the global GDP is around 15%. The share of European shipping to the global fleet is 35%. Shipping is a European success story. And we're going to see in these studies that if we want to maintain our competitiveness edge, we need to do better. And the thing is that, especially talking about security, especially talking about geopolitical uncertainty, shipping, European shipping, is a geopolitical asset for our economy and for our continent. We keep our edge on the global supply chains by maintaining a high percentage of the global fleet. In the summit, we were going to talk about all these issues, about our key role to our continent's security, our key role to our continent's energy transition, the need to make the seafaring profession more attractive, the need to upskill and reskill up to 800,000 seafarers by the mid-2030s to catch up with the energy and digital transition, and of course, how to finance this transition, where to find the investments. The Draghi report found that we're going to need, on an annual basis, around 40 billion euros for European shipping alone. This is an immense challenge, and we need to find the tools and to put the money on the table. It's, as you said before, as you mentioned in the introduction, the competitiveness compass and the Clean Industrial Deal, which is the big investment plan of the Commission for the next 5 years, have clearly recognized the role of shipping. But we need to move from the commitments to action. We need immediate action. And of course, there are positive references to shipping, but now we need to make it happen.
Shipping, of course, has always been a critical strategic industry. It's just that the political acknowledgement of that fact hasn't always matched reality. But the fact that politicians are now increasingly recognizing the importance of shipping as the backbone of crucial supply chains that carries more than 80% of the world's goods and underpins the global energy system, well, that's useful. And having the facts and figures to hand is important when we try to support that in terms of lobbying. Danish Shipping has commissioned a global advisory firm, Macro Advisory Partners, to produce a report that analyzes the risks and opportunities facing Danish shipping specifically in a changing world. The report highlights a series of key market risks arising from structural changes. They will be fairly familiar to all of those listening. They include more frequent geopolitical shocks, critical dependence on China in several areas, fragmented capital markets, and things like data vulnerabilities. None of this is necessarily news to us, but it is important when we are talking to politicians. And as Danish Shipping's chief executive, Anne Stephenson, points out, that political engagement is crucial right now.
I think it's becoming increasingly clear over the past, few months at least, or weeks, that shipping is critical infrastructure. It is critical for supply chains. It's critical for being independent, whether you are a country or a bloc. And it's, a critical sector for not only great powers like China and the US, but also for Europe. So I think that in that respect, I think that it has become even more clear than before that shipping is critical. I think that's a good thing in the sense that I think it's important that we acknowledge the fact that shipping is providing the infrastructure to keep trade flowing. Of course, there's flip sides to that in the sense that, yes, it makes it interesting for European, American, Chinese decision makers to make sure that they have a stake in shipping. And for us as a shipping industry, it makes sort of our contribution to not only world trade, but also to security and supply chains becomes much more visible. So in that respect, I think it's an important development.
But getting shipping recognized as a critical part of the policy proposals in play is only half the battle. All of this high-profile engagement amounts to very little if that doesn't come with money and action.
Well, I think that, the fact that it's acknowledged that shipping is critical infrastructure also means that we need to make sure, at least from a Danish and European perspective, that we have the right framework conditions in order to be able to compete in the global market. And I think that is, an important sort of side of discussing how shipping is going to evolve in the years to come. And from a Danish perspective, and that's why we had also the report commission from macro advisors. It is that having such a big merchant fleet, being a relatively small country, but being part of a European context, it is important for us that we can continue to compete in the global market. And I think that that's why we are very happy that the Danish government has set down this growth team, where they are looking at coming up with recommendations that can make sure that we stay competitive, that we are on the right side of history also in terms of continue to move on the green agenda, which is sometimes a little bit in the background now in the sort of global discussions of the shipping industry, but which remains a very important agenda in order to make sure that we also do the right thing for the future of the shipping industry. And then last but not least, also to make sure that we that we continue to have a strong merchant fleet that can contribute not only to wealth creation in our country and in Europe, but also to security. Because the thing is that, any framework condition that we're discussing these days is also about how do we make sure that it also provides security. So business framework conditions and security is going hand in hand in the discussions that we have in Denmark and in Europe.
Obviously, there is a lot of detail and nuance that underpins all of this, but underpinning all of that is the money. As Satiris has already mentioned, the basic investment requirement that shipping has mapped out in the Draghi report, essentially the blueprint for economic growth that has been set out in Europe and is now being manifested through these various policy programs, well, that's around 40 billion euros a year. But overall, investment is north of 900 billion euros a year. And just because the plans are being set, and we have things like the Clean Industrial Deal and a maritime strategy coming, that doesn't necessarily mean to say that we are going to get the action we need to move ahead. So, does shipping's newfound political profile actually deliver what we need as an industry? That's the question.
The conclusion of the Draghi report, the conclusion of the competitiveness compass and the Clean Industrial Deal is that we're going to need in Europe a level of investments that we haven't seen for 30 or 40 years in the continent. And we need to find a way to finance the transition. Talking about shipping, the ETS alone, in its full development, we will generate, on average, around 9 billion euros per year. This money will go to the national budget of the governments. And we need to use this money wisely. We need to use this money to support industrial capacity in Europe. It's not that we're arguing for getting the money back to the sector. We want the governments to use the money to enhance the industrial resilience of our continent, to manufacture clean tech in the continent, to produce the clean fuels we need for our transition in the continent. One of our proposals is to produce 40% of the clean fuels and the clean tech we need for the FuelEU Maritime and the ETS in Europe, and for that purpose, to channel these revenues and support investments. We need also to address access to private finance. We have seen that the Basel rules, the new Basel rules, are not fit for purpose for the shipping sector. We're a sector with a high risk profile, and this doesn't fit with the new rules of Basel. And this has contributed to the migration of ship finance to outside Europe, I would say, that we have seen a decline of ship finance in Europe. So we need to address all these issues, and the finance and the investments is an important one. We need also clarity and simplification. And the Commission has started now the process of simplifying different rules, especially the reporting requirements. This is really key for businesses. It's also the commitment of the Commission to reduce the administrative burden, especially for the SMEs, which is the backbone of the shipping industry, by 35%. Again, it's a very positive step forward that we've got the first simplification package 2 weeks ago. But we need to see more. We need to see more action now.
But all this is not happening in isolation. Europe may have prioritized shipping, but so has the US, and China's government-backed dominance in shipping is not going away anytime soon. Certainly not come out of the blue. The great powers increasingly view shipping as a crucial strategic sector and are taking steps to bolster their position. So, how does Europe take on the US and China?
We need to look at the facts, and we need to look why we do still maintain part of shipbuilding in Europe. For instance, we're quite competitive in cruise ships, we're quite competitive in offshore vessels. Our shipbuilding industry is less competitive in other segments. What is key for us is that what the investments should support. Should we just breed the labor costs, or to invest in clean tech, in clean fuels, whatever is bringing added value to our economy? There is a reason why we still manufacture planes in Europe. It's advanced technology. And our message to the shipbuilding sector, by the way, we have an excellent dialogue and cooperation with the representatives of the shipbuilding sector in Brussels, with Sea Europe. Of course, we have different views on different topics, but we talk a lot, and we're trying hard to find common ground. Our message to our colleagues in the shipbuilding sector is that they have to invest in clean tech to take back the competitiveness advantage. This is the only way to make it happen. And this is, again, if we want to zoom out and look at the European economy, this is the only way for the European economy to become again more competitive. This is again the same for the car makers in Europe. We all need to invest in advanced technology and in clean tech. This is the only way to take back our competitiveness edge. Nobody in the world is investing in fossil fuels these days. Especially if you look at, you mentioned China, you mentioned the US. The US was attracting again more investments because of the IRA. It was the same in China. They didn't invest in fossil fuel projects. And the thing there is that, talking again about investments and simplification, we were having these talks with fuel suppliers, and they're saying that for them it's also the red tape for investment to bring them back money. It takes double the time that it takes in the US, for instance.
But there is a real danger here that these two debates are, to some extent, contradictory. The security that we need here in Europe and the inward-looking investment to secure that trade somehow acts against the globalized instincts of a global industry that works best with global rules. Is there a danger here that we end up pulling in two separate directions?
Of course, you can see that as something that could be a result of the discussion that we have now. I mean, we've seen the president of United States, coming up with new custom tariffs, and that is, of course, in itself not something that we in the shipping industry are very interested in, because we are by nature a sort of free trade industry, because we carry the world trade on our ships, as you know. But it's too early to see what the actual impact is going to be from that. By nature, shipping is mobile. It's mobile in terms of being adaptive to new trade patterns, trade routes. It's also adaptive in terms of catering to specific asks by specific countries. So in that respect, I think it's early days to judge what is going to be the result of this yet, and that also goes for the suggestion of imposing duties on port calls involving Chinese-built vessels, has also been suggested by the US. We will see. I mean, of course, there are downsides to this from a customer perspective, in the sense that no matter how you look at it, it will be more costly for consumers to have end products which are more expensive to transport.
I mean, we have seen the protectionist calls. This is not something new. It's been there for at least the last 8 years. But if we are serious about decarbonizing shipping, international shipping, as you said, shipping is by nature international. We need an international level playing field. We need ambitious measures and ambitious decisions at IMO level. This is the only way to ensure the green transition of our sector. And this is something that is sometimes neglected here in Brussels, that shipping is probably the only sector, the only international sector of the economy with a level of climate ambition that matches the level of the European climate ambition to become net zero by 2050. We hope that we're going to see the measures we need adopted by the IMO in the next months, in the following months, and we will need an alignment with the EU measures after that. Having a level playing field at international level is the only way to deliver in the energy transition of the sector.
Look, I am knowingly offering up a very Eurocentric view of the world this week. It is not the full story, I know, but I think it's an interesting point for European shipping, where the importance of a thriving shipping sector to national and economic security is becoming increasingly significant in a much more volatile world. That brings opportunities, clearly, but European shipping, and Europe more widely, faces a high degree of uncertainty ahead. Now, I'm off to Asia soon, specifically Singapore Maritime Week, where I hope to bring you another perspective on these themes. But in the meantime, I would highly recommend reading the Danish shipping report mentioned earlier, and if you can, attend the European Shipping Summit in Brussels next week. For now, though, that's where we're going to be ending this week's edition. We will, of course, be back with more next week. Until then, stay safe out there. Thanks for listening. Bye.